with a special guest. I'm your host, Jay Felicio. I go by GManJ on Twitter. With me, as always, is my sidekick, Dan Turner. He goes by Eagle Dan on Twitter. Eagle Dan FF. What's going on, Dan? You doing all right?
Yeah, man. How you doing? Doing good today.
Sorry, I'm messing up your Twitter handle there.
You're not sorry at all. You did it on purpose.
Well, with us, we've got, if you do any sort of fantasy baseball, fantasy football, you've got to know who this guy is. Adam Ronis, I appreciate you joining us tonight. How's it going?
It's going well, man. The weeks fly by. Week 7 kicking off tomorrow night. It's amazing. We're about like halfway through the fantasy football season. It just seems to go rapidly.
Yeah, it's really hard to believe. And I'll be honest, I was not very optimistic that we would actually get a season. And then now it's already halfway over. We'll see if it actually finishes, but it seems to always happen where before you know it, the season's gone. So hopefully we can continue. So appreciate you coming on. And what we're going to do tonight, normally our Thursday shows, we go over topics from my 10 Things article and Dan's Rookie Ranks. And of course, we always take your questions. We're wanting to take your questions. This is more of a season long versus start sit. So, try to gear the questions towards that. We're going to discuss in running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, the MVP, who we feel is the MVP at the midpoint of the season, your biggest bust, biggest surprise, and guys who we think you should buy low. So we are going to start off with some questions that we got submitted before. We've got one from Jeff Lambert. Carson Wentz or Gardner Minchu, one quarterback dynasty. Adam, we'll start with you. Who would you rather have long term, Carson Wentz or Gardner Minshew?
Yeah, in Dynasty, I think it's Wentz. We know Minshew's time is not going to be long for Jacksonville. There were already some murmurs that he could potentially get benched soon. There were some comments from DJ Chark where he wasn't really happy with the quarterback play. And when you read between the lines, that they're not getting the football. We saw it last week. He had 14 targets. Minshew missed them on about a 50-yard play. So, yeah, Minshew's been fine for fantasy when you look at the numbers. He's generally in the QB 10 to 15 range every week, but long term, it's Wentz. Now, Wentz has obviously some issues as well with Philadelphia dealing with all the injuries, but he's actually been playing pretty well for fantasy. He's been running a little bit. Now, some of those weapons could come back, maybe Deshaun Jackson, Dallas Goedert soon. So Wentz would be the guy over Minshew just because we know Minshew is not going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL for long.
Dan, you're the resident Eagles fan here, so I kind of have a feeling where I think you're going to go with this, but what do you have to say, Minshew or Carson Wentz?
Yeah, in Dynasty, it's Wentz. I think that Minshew's doing really well this year. They're giving him 60 passes a game, but over the long term, I think with everyone coming back healthy, Rager coming back, Goddard, if they can nail down an offensive line that actually stays healthy for more than 5 minutes, I think Wentz will do good over his career more than Minshew will.
Yeah, and you guys pretty much said it all. I agree. It's Wentz. I don't think Minshew Mania is fun with his swagger and his Beowulf nickname and the stash and everything, but they're going to be looking to move on from him unless he goes on some ridiculous run. But they're going to be drafting high and they're going to be looking for a quarterback of the future. So I still think Wentz has it. I was high on Wentz. He's hurt me a little bit in fantasy, but he's put up okay stats. But it's understandable with the way the line is, the way that throwing a Greg Ward and Ertz is hurt now. Goddard's been hurt. Everybody's been hurt. So I agree. I think long term you definitely want Wentz over Minshew.
Yeah, I'm going for my Eagles tryout tomorrow. Actually.
Yeah. Hey, you'll be better than what they're throwing out there right now. So.
Yeah.
Next question we've got is from Justin Dupius, the Ragin' Cajun. Wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season, T. Higgins, Christian Kirk, or Mike Williams. Dan, what do you think on this one?
I'm going to go with T. Higgins. I think that he's building a solid rapport with Burrow. He's number 3 in targets, 2 in receptions, and he leads the team in receiving TDs. I think, going forward, he can only improve. So I think rest of the season, Higgins is the bet.
What you think, Adam?
Yeah, I agree. I roll with Higgins too. We've seen his role just increase each and every single week. We know this is a team that's going to be pass heavy, and Burrow's developed a nice rapport with him. I like Mike Williams a lot as a talent. The problem with him is obviously Keenan Allen is there. He's going to command a lot of targets, and you have Hunter Henry. But I do see Williams as a guy that has value the rest of the way. I mean, we saw him make tremendous catches in that last game before the bye, including that one along the sideline. And Justin Herbert's not afraid to take shots downfield. So I think it's actually a pretty good fit, where I had some trepidation about Mike Williams going into the year. Not sure how long Taylor was going to be the quarterback, what we would see from Herbert. But Williams actually was a free agent in a couple of, even some high-stakes leagues a couple of weeks ago. I was stunned. So I put in big bids to try to get him and fell short a little bit. And Christian Kirk, I do think he's on the rise. Only had the couple targets this week against Dallas, but they need to open up that offense. And Kyler Murray, as great as he has been for fantasy, has kind of struggled as a passer. He's gotten a lot of his value on the ground, 5 rushing touchdowns so far this year. So I do see Kirk moving on up in this offense, but it's definitely T. Higgins at the top of the list of those 3.
Yeah, I hate to just keep agreeing with you guys, but yeah, it's T. Higgins for me as well. And I do like Mike Williams. The only thing that scares me, I feel like every time he catches the ball, he falls hard. I saw somebody say on Twitter, it looks like every ball he catches, he looks like he's getting choke slammed by the Undertaker. And he's not been able to stay healthy over his career. If Allen is having issues with the back spasms, and he winds up becoming the number 1, if Keenan Allen can't get over that, then I could see him shooting up. But Burrow seems to be building that rapport with Higgins. There's rumors that AJ Green's going to get traded. Whether that happens or not, who knows? But I'm with you guys on this one. It's definitely Higgins for me. I would go Higgins, Mike Williams, and Kirk. It's just Hopkins commands so many targets in that offense. There's not a lot of room unless, like you said, unless they start throwing the ball a lot more, there's not a lot of room unless he breaks those big plays. He had a huge game, but it was 2 catches on 3 targets. So we got a question from the chat from our guy, Marty. Said, Superflex Dynasty 12-team PPR looking to acquire Teddy Bridgewater as a 3rd quarterback. What do you guys think is a fair draft pick? So Superflex 12-team looking to get a 3rd quarterback. What do you think, pick-wise, what do you think you would expect for Teddy Bridgewater, Adam?
Probably 2nd or 3rd round pick. I mean, you got to have the discussion with the other owner and figure out what they want, but I wouldn't give up a 1st for him. I'm assuming too, if he's looking to acquire Bridgewater, maybe it's as his 3rd quarterback, or maybe he's got a bad second.
That's what it says, as his 3rd.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go crazy and give up a ton. Look, he's played pretty well so far, but I thought he had a really bad game against the Bears, and that was the concern. The Panthers have played a lot better than I anticipated. I think a lot of people thought this would be one of the worst teams in football because of their defense, and they haven't been. I think they have probably overachieved a little bit, and we'll see them come back to the pack. But yeah, I think the thing with Bridgewater was like, all right, they're going to be playing from behind. He's going to have to pass a lot, and that really hasn't been the case every week so far.
Yeah, what do you think, Dan? What kind of pick would it take for Bridgewater? What do you think's fair?
Probably mid, 2nd, and lower. Like, I'm not going to give up premium assets for him. He's been decent with the quarterback crop coming out next year. I don't want to trade a 1st and run the risk of losing out on the Fields or Lawrence or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, he's decent, but as a 3rd QB, I mean, you're not going to – he's obviously a backup in that scenario in Superflex. So I wouldn't give up a ton of draft capital for him.
Yeah, definitely no way at 1st. 2nd or 3rd is about right, I would say, as well. So we've got one more question. PPR, you trade Joshua Kelly and Boston Scott for Swift. The guy has Miles Sanders and Eckler, so I guess he's trying to secure the backups for his guys. I would do that in a heartbeat. Swift, for me, I've said it a lot. I think Swift is going to be this year's version of Miles Sanders. He's going to turn it on at the end of the year and potentially be a league winner if Patricia can get his head out of his ass. So we'll see. Kelly, I've got him in a few places, but it looks like Justin Jackson's taking over that. He's going to be the more valuable fantasy asset in that backfield. And Boston Scott, he's Boston Scott. I could see him having a decent game against the Giants, but even if Sanders is out next week, then they're on a bye the week after that, and Sanders should be back. So I would do that in a heartbeat. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I would too. I mean, Boston Scott's a 1 to 2 week rental, and even with that, you don't know how he's going to perform. Does get a good matchup against the Giants this week on Thursday night. Kelly, it was kind of even with him and Justin Jackson. And then late in the game, as it was close, it was all Justin Jackson and then went into overtime. My guess is because Kelly had fumbled 2 times in the previous 2 games. So they probably didn't want to risk that. And Swift, look, you hope that Patricia starts to get him the football more. He still didn't play a huge percentage of snaps last week. He was clearly better than Adrian Peterson. Peterson's still a respectable running back considering his age. And I have Swift in a lot of leagues. And he was on the bench in all of them except one where I had Alvin Kamara on bye and I didn't have much at running back. So I kind of had no choice. Kind of got lucky. It sucks to have that performance on the bench. But yes, I mean, he clearly has the highest ceiling of those guys because what I look for is, okay, does this running back have a pathway to being the main back in that backfield? And Swift does. It's just a matter of, do they put Peterson on the back burner? And you have to hope they do. I mean, just look at the carries and the yards and the big plays by Swift. You're not getting that from Peterson.
Dan, what's your take?
Yeah, this is an instant accept if I ever saw it. You're basically trading 2 average to below average handcuff guys for a guy that could be, a league winner if things fall right. So even with Sanders being out, the Eagles are weird with running backs. You still have Corey Clement carries. Kelly seems to be falling out of favor with the Chargers, and Justin Jackson is there. So I think if Patricia, to your point, if Patricia can just, play the guy that's the most talented and stop with the Adrian Peterson nonsense, then it's definitely Swift.
Like we said the other night, he's out of that Belichick tree, so he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, but not too many of the Belichick coaches have done much other than Vrabel. You see what he did with the 12th man penalty the other night? That was pretty ingenious.
He wasn't even a Belichick coach. He just played for him.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean, but he's still. So what we're going to do, we're going to move on to the midseason awards. We're going to go position by position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And we're each going to give our take for MVP, for biggest surprise of the season, the biggest bust, and who we feel is a buy low. So we're going to start with quarterbacks, and we will go with you, Adam. Who is your MVP at the midseason point of this season so far?
Should be Dak Prescott, but he got hurt. So he's
still leading the league in passing yardage. That's unreal.
Look, you got to look at points per game, and I think that's a problem that in fantasy that people are like, oh, well, he's the first quarterback now or QB4. We've had bye weeks. So I like to look at points per game, and Russell Wilson is blowing away the field. Remember, he had a bye last week. So, yeah, there's a couple of quarterbacks that I think, depending on the scoring format, might have more, but, he had a bye. I'm looking at leagues with 6 points for a passing touchdown. These are his games: 39.8, 44.4, 45.8, 25.4, and 31.5. And the biggest problem I've had with Russell Wilson over the years is the Seahawks don't let him throw. If you look at his pass attempts and the numbers he's put up, it's insane that this guy has been able to have seasons of 30-plus passing touchdowns. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL, and this year they've opened it up. And I think part of it is their defense is so bad. And even with that said, believe it or not, Russell Wilson has one game this year of 40 pass attempts, and that's a season high. He still has games of 32, 34, and he still puts up ridiculous numbers. 2 games of 5 passing touchdowns. We know he runs a little bit. I mean, for me, it's Russell Wilson.
Dan, who's your MVP? I don't think anybody would disagree with the Wilson take.
Yeah, no, Wilson, I was actually thinking about Wilson when I was considering this question. He's definitely my close second, but I'm going to take Mahomes. I know it's probably the easy answer, but he's still Patrick Mahomes. He hasn't had less than 210 yards or 2 touchdowns in any game at any point this season. He has a little bit of rushing ability. Not that Wilson doesn't, obviously, but I think if you're he's just consistently been like amazing and just above all else, everyone else probably for the exception of Wilson in the league. So I'm going to go with Mahomes.
Yeah, you definitely did take the easy way out, but that's okay. We expect that from you. So, nobody's going to argue that Mahomes or Wilson isn't the MVP, but I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. I'm going to say Josh Allen, and simply because he's putting up similar numbers to those guys, but you could get him later in drafts. He was the QB9 off the board. He's a QB4 in average points per game, even after having a rough game against Kansas City, which was his only one that he didn't score at least 20 points. He's got, 42 points, 39 points, 29 points, 32 points. So he's, I think the Stephon Diggs acquisition has done wonders for this offense. I definitely think that he's somebody that if he continues to go this route is in the MVP talk for both fantasy and for the actual NFL. So I think when you're talking about relative value when it comes to it, I think Allen is just a little bit better of a value than those other guys. So we're going to move on to the biggest surprise. And Adam, you and I both have the same guy here. Who's your biggest surprise at the quarterback position?
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill. I think a lot of people doubted him. They saw what he did last year, and he was very efficient on limited pass attempts and said, well, that's not repeatable. And it was reflected in draft rooms. I mean, he was going sometimes 15th, 16th, 17th quarterback off the board. No one wanted him. We knew Tennessee would be a run-first offense, but they've had some cracks in the defense, and Tannehill's doing it again where he's just really efficient, not a guy that gets heavy volume. And he has top 40 passing attempts twice this year. Obviously, that shootout against the Texans, he had 4 passing touchdowns, also had a rushing touchdown. So he's had at least 2 passing touchdowns in 4 of his 5 games. The one game he didn't, he passed for 321 yards on Minnesota. And he's had to deal with not a full strength with his weapons. You know, A.J. Brown missed some games. Corey Davis has been out. Yes, I'm not calling Corey Davis a weapon, but, you know, he's been out. Missed the game with COVID. Jonnu Smith left last week's game with an ankle injury. So he hasn't had a full array of weapons, and he just keeps getting it done. And it just feels like everyone continues to doubt him. And I do have him in one league where I've pretty much been starting him every week. And I just think he doesn't get enough respect. And if you want to say, well, the efficiency is not going to continue. I mean, we've seen it now for a full calendar year. And, you know, he's going to get tested. He's had some favorable matchups. If you want to look at the other side, Jacksonville, Minnesota, Bills, Texans, it's going to get tough this week against the Steelers. But one of the weaknesses for the Steelers is against the pass. And he's got the Bears and the Colts ahead and the Ravens. So there are some tough matchups ahead. And maybe he doesn't continue to produce at this level. But so far, based on his price and where he was drafted, he's been one of the bigger surprises to me. Yeah, absolutely. I was just pulling up his ADP. According to Fantasy Football Calculator, he was the 20th quarterback taken behind Phillip Rivers, Jimmy G, Baker Mayfield. Yep, Daniel Jones. I mean, it just the Kirk Cousins, Garoppolo, Goff. I mean, the names here, if you took any of those guys over Tannehill, you have to be sick to your stomach. You know, talking about points per game, he's the quarterback 6 in points per game. And yeah, I'm with you. If his stats are comparable to Mahomes since he's taken over as a starter, which is just unbelievable. Dan, who do you got as your biggest surprise?
I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. I think going into the year, we thought he was going to be okay. Maybe draft him as like a third QB in Superflex or a backup, but he's actually, you know, more than held his own. He's number 8 in the league in passing yards right now. He offers some, you know, rushing potential, has 2 TDs there. He's building with a rapport with T. Higgins. He has Boyd there, AJ Green if he stays. I don't think that everyone expected him to be this good this fast, but he is turning into, he's a top 20 QB in terms of points at the position. So you can actually start him and not feel like you're going to lose the week immediately.
Yeah, he made the Colts defense look silly this week, where everybody thought he was going to really struggle. And the Colts, in my opinion, have one of the best defenses in the NFL. So that was he really impressed me this week with the way he played. I'm going to grab we have a question from the chat. I just traded away Myles Gaskin for Justin Jackson and a third in a contract salary league, both on 1-year deals, but Jackson extension amount is much more favorable. I'll be honest, although I'm not huge on Gaskin, I would probably rather have him just for the sake of once Eckler's back, you know, Jackson's going to go back to the bench. They play the same role. You saw he really wasn't doing much. Joshua Kelly was already involved in the offense because he plays that Melvin Gordon role to the Eckler role in this backfield. So even though the pick is nice, you know, it remains to be seen if they replace Gaskin at the end of the year. I wasn't very high on him. But he's came out of nowhere and really he keeps producing. What do you guys think about this trade?
Yeah, same thing. Gaskin's getting all the volume right now. I mean, Jordan Howard's been inactive, a healthy inactive the last couple of weeks. They don't use Matt Breida much. So that's what you need at running back is you need volume. And, some of these running backs that I think people consider disappointments, you look, if they're healthy and they're getting you double-digit points in PPR, you're happy with that. And that's kind of the category Gaskin is in right now. And Jackson's value is going to be short-lived. I know they said Eckler is not progressing and it's going to be a little bit longer. So we might not see Eckler till week 10, maybe longer. So maybe Jackson has a bigger window than we think. People are very optimistic when it comes to injuries, and I think you got to take the opposite approach. Whenever they say, "Oh, he's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks," I'm looking at the 4 weeks or longer. You never know how things are going to heal, and they did say this is a pretty significant injury for Eckler. So maybe Jackson's in there a lot longer than we think. But if Eckler does return in 3 weeks, it's going to hurt Jackson.
Dan, what's your take?
Yeah, this is, I think, a no-brainer. I would keep Gaskin. He's not, the most athletically gifted or anything, but he's getting all the volume there. I mean, volume is king, really. And Jackson, he might be good for a week or two, maybe. Yeah, he's not.
He's a solid PPR running back, but
yeah, I mean, but he's not a world beater
there.
So it's not like you're trading for McCaffrey or anything like that. So I think I would have kept Gaskin in that situation personally.
And who knows, too, they might start to lean on the run even more to try to ease Tua into it when he takes over next week. So Gaskin's value could even inch up just a little bit more. And speaking of biggest surprise, our guy Marty in the chat said, "What about Herbert? Not a bad surprise as QB." Yeah, I think he surprised everybody, including himself. I wonder how much he paid that doctor to stab Taylor in the lung so he could get in there. But it
was worth it for him.
Absolutely, he's worth every penny. But yeah, I just missed out on by $1 in a super flex league that I'm in. It's that auction redraft I was telling you about, and I'm really kicking myself I didn't go all in on them. But yeah, I mean it's unreal. There's no way that even if Tyrod was back sooner that they could have went back to him the way that he's playing.
Yeah, I was able to get him in a couple leagues. Pretty glad on that. I also agree there were a couple leagues where I fell short that I wish I had him now because I've had a little bit too much Daniel Jones on my rosters this year, which just crushed me.
I know how bad that is. So.
I could definitely use Herbert in some of those leagues, but yeah, I mean, he's been unbelievable. I just like his aggressive. He's made mistakes, but any rookie is going to make mistakes, and especially with his level of aggressiveness and taking shots downfield, it's going to happen. But fantasy-wise, their schedule is pretty friendly upcoming. And again, like the weapons on this team, Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Mike Williams, the running backs as well. So, yeah, definitely Herbert's a guy that I think is one of the bigger surprises this year, no doubt.
Dan, what's your take on Herbert?
Yeah, I was really high on Herbert coming into the year. I think that if he was given a chance to start, I didn't understand why everyone was so down on him come draft time. I thought that was kind of silly, to be honest. I think with the weapons that they have there in LA, and he's shown the willingness to sling it around. He's Keenan Allen's favorite guy right now. So I think that going forward he'll be a slot QB.
Yeah, I think people forget if he would have came out a year earlier, he very well could have been the first quarterback off the board. So I think with the way that Burrow looked, as people just forgot how good Herbert is. That's why he snuck up on everybody. So moving on to quarterback bust. Adam, yours hurts me personally because this man won me a lot of money last year in a lot of leagues, but I understand where you're coming from. Who is your biggest bust for quarterback at the midseason point?
Yeah, maybe some people are surprised by this, but it's Lamar Jackson. What did you guys pay for him? First or second round pick? Right now in points per game, he's 11th. Derek Carr averages more points per game than him. Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill. So, yeah. I think the encouraging sign is it looks like the knee is fine because 2 weeks ago, he rushed 2 times for 3 yards. That was a major red flag. We know he was on the injury report that week, but he did bust out a long run at the end of the game. But he's been held to 20 or fewer fantasy points in 3 of his 6 games this year, man. That's not what you paid for. And you could tell me, well, in the other 3 games he had 30, but that's inconsistency. And you need him to win you weeks. And there's 3 weeks where he was not an asset to your team. I do think, though, he is someone that you could potentially buy low on. They have a very good schedule, especially the fantasy playoffs, weeks 14 to 16. Browns, Jacksonville, and the Giants, man. So, sweet schedule. But after the bye, he gets the Steelers, the Colts, and the Patriots. Not the easiest matchups. And he's had a problem throwing the football this year. I mean, he's been held to 204 passing yards or fewer in every game except one. And in fact, he's been under 204 consecutive games. So we knew the regression was going to come. And here's the thing in fantasy. You got to learn a lesson, okay? And there were a lot of people this year, oh, Lamar Jackson's going to be fine. It's going to be the same. We've seen it with Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. When you have that historic season, Patrick Mahomes as well, when you have that historic season that's an outlier, you don't repeat it. It just doesn't happen. And we're seeing it with Lamar Jackson right now. So learn from that and don't overpay for that quarterback the following season. And people do it every damn year, and they'll do it again this year with someone, probably Kyler Murray, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Yep. You took the words right from my mouth. I was just about to say, if people would learn to not buy high, the reason Lamar Jackson was so valuable last year is because you got him in the later rounds, and he played up to the level. When you're spending a first, second round pick, he's got to produce in order to return value. And like you said, those historic seasons they're historic for a reason. They're not going to repeat them the next year. So I as much as it hurts me to say, I completely agree. Dan, who do you have for your biggest bust so far this year?
On the Lamar Jackson point, I have him as my 10th round keeper, so I don't mind him being his 11th as much. I didn't have to use
$15, so
yeah,
I can deal with that.
Yeah, mine it's going to be Matthew Stafford. Usually, he has a couple of crappy games, and then garbage time saves him, and he ends up being like a top 10 QB. But it just isn't happening this year. He hasn't even hit a He's hovering around like the mid-20s in terms of quarterbacks, and that's not what people expect with that kind of offense to have in Detroit with all those weapons. So I think that going forward, I've seen him dropped in a lot of leagues. He's throwing a couple more picks than usual, so it's Stafford for me.
Yeah, I agree with that too. He's someone that I was really expecting a lot more, especially that pace that he was on last year before he got hurt. But that's why, that's another reason that you don't necessarily take what happened last year and just extrapolate it over a season and take it for that's what's going to happen. So many things change year after year. You got to really take it for what it's worth. Yeah, you can look at the last season and take some idea what's going to happen, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. So for me, biggest bust is going to be Drew Brees. Yeah, he's been without Michael Thomas, but he just looks washed. I feel like it takes everything in his might to just muster up one or two deep throws. I feel like it's Peyton Manning at the end of his career, where not quite as bad as that last season, but he's out there more for his mind and how great of a quarterback is in his head and not necessarily with his arm anymore. He's dead last in attempted air yards. He's 28th in air yards per completion. I'm not one of the, I think air yards is useful. I don't think it's a be-all, end-all, but it just goes to show that his yardage is coming from yards after the catch with the season that Alvin Kamara is having. Right now, he's a QB 20 on average points per game, and he was drafted as the 7th quarterback off the board. So that's a drastic drop for where he was taken. It'll probably improve some when the slant master Michael Thomas comes back. If he comes back this week, I saw he was banged up a little bit, but I just think where he was being drafted, he's the biggest bust for me. So we're going to move on to buy lows. Adam, who do you think is somebody that's going to have a good rest of the season you can get for pretty cheap right now?
Yeah, I know he had a good game last week, so maybe it's a little tougher. But Matt Ryan, people were dropping him. He was dropped in one of my home leagues. He had three straight games where he had one passing touchdown, and we know they made the coaching change and they had the matchup last week against Minnesota, and he put up the big game. But it's really tied to Julio Jones. When he's healthy with Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst, there's an explosive offense. Their defense is terrible. And we've seen Matt Ryan just put up big numbers when he's healthy. So, he had that poor 3-game stretch where I think people just really soured on him. But this is a team that's going to be passing quite a bit. Todd Gurley has been okay for fantasy, but he doesn't look the same. The guy cannot run laterally at all. Straight ahead, fine. And you get near the goal line, he'll get in, but he's not involved in the passing game, and they're going to lean on the pass a lot. So if someone soured on Matt Ryan or is not buying the last week, I would try and get him.
Yeah, I definitely completely agree with that. What do you think, Dan? Who's your buy low?
It's going to be Gardner Minshew. For some reason, I don't know why, this week he's been dropped in a lot of my leagues. I don't really get it at all. Hasn't thrown less than 40 times in any game this season. He's top 10 in the position. He has a bunch of weapons with Shark coming back healthy, Cole, Visca there. So if there's something going on that I don't know about, try to get him.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he's dropped. I definitely don't think he's how he was producing the first few weeks, but I don't think I think he could do a lot worse. I wouldn't have dropped him. My guy's going to be your guy, Dan, Carson Wentz. We've talked about how although he's on the field, he's looked pretty bad. Fantasy-wise, he hasn't been too bad. I think he's, depending on scoring, he's around that QB 14, so a borderline QB 1 with no weapons, no offensive line. Miles Sanders is now going to miss his second game. He's got Fulgham emerging. He's got Rager and Goddard coming back. The ghost of Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey eventually coming back. I think D-Jax is supposed to play this week. But the extra rushing that he's done because he's running for his life has really added a decent floor, and he's got a really, really good schedule coming up. Next games are Giants, Dallas, Giants again, Cleveland, Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, and Dallas. So that's a fantastic schedule. There's a lot of points going to be scored in those, and he leads the league in attempted air yards, so he's still trying to air it out. If he can just get somebody out there that can actually catch the ball, I think he's somebody that if somebody's ready to just cut the cord on him, that you can get for pretty cheap, and he's going to return some pretty good value. Kyle in the chat said, hearing rumors that the Jags might bench Minchu, that may explain him being dropped. I don't think they're going to bench him. I saw that report too. I think it's more just a motivational tactic. What do you guys think? You think they'll actually consider benching him?
Not this year.
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, I saw that story too. But I mean, he would have to be pretty awful for that to happen. I mean, there's no point to doing it. You just let him play it out and see if he could turn things around. But we know they're probably going to draft a quarterback anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to play Mike Glennon? I mean, come on.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's win-win. If he sucks, then you get a better pick. If he's good, then, if he turns it on, maybe you have a quarterback of the future. But I agree. I think they're going to draft somebody. And Marty said, Wentz is a bust. Daniel Jones is a bust. Pay Dak. So as much as I hate the Cowboys, I definitely agree with that statement. I think that hopefully Jerry does the right thing and pays him. I think they'll wind up tagging him, but who knows? Maybe they'll wind up giving him a contract. But.
Adam, as a Dallas fan, what do you think about that contract situation with Dak?
Look, they got to pay him, man. I mean, it's pretty clear, and unfortunately, they couldn't get it done, and it sucked. Like, not even as a Cowboys fan, just watching that happen, I felt bad. I'm pro player with everything. Like, I hate when people criticize the players. Oh, they're selfish. They're holding out. Do you guys realize how short an NFL career is? Your window to get money is very small. You get the guaranteed money whenever you can. I have no problem with it. And Dak still got a big payday this year, so good for him. And it just sucks that he couldn't get the money before this injury. And this is why players do it, because of situations like this. And everyone's like, oh, these running backs are overpaid. Yeah, they are. I see both sides do it. If you're a GM of a team, you don't want to invest heavily in a running back. Look at how these contracts have backfired. Todd Gurley, David Johnson, and Ezekiel Elliott's probably going to backfire too. But I don't blame these players, man. They, especially as a running back, you got that rookie contract 4 or 5 years. Your best years are behind you, man. This is your last opportunity to get money. So I'll never blame these players for getting money. I remember having an argument with someone years ago about Robinson Cano. They clearly were a Yankee fan. They're like, oh, Robinson Cano's so selfish. The Yankees offered him $220 or whatever it was, and he went to Seattle for $240. And I'm like, you would have done the same thing. No, I'm not. I'm a teacher making $50K. You can't put yourself in your shoes and compare yourself to a damn athlete. They live a different lifestyle. They have a lot of people to take care of, and we're all human. You could say, oh, I would take 180 over 260. No, you wouldn't. When you're at the damn table with the contract and your agent's like, hey, we got 260 here to go to Seattle. You can spend your off seasons in New York or wherever you want to go. But here you go, 260 compared to 180. We're all taking 260. And if you say you're not, you're lying, man. Because you're talking from the perspective of someone who makes 50, 60, 70, whatever you make. So you have that mentality. You got to put yourself outside that mentality and put yourself in the shoes of an athlete when this money is in front of you that is guaranteed that you're never going to see after your athletic career ends. So I hate when people say these athletes are selfish. Yes, teachers are underpaid. Anyone who does service, that's not the argument. But you're doing a service that anyone could do. I can become a teacher, right? Almost all of us. Can I play professional baseball in NFL? No, I can't.
Yep, I completely agree, and I'm a pro player as well. And as much as I hated to see Robbie Cano go, you can't argue with it. And he probably just wanted to grow a little bit of facial hair too, since he's not
Like
allowed.
DeMarco Murray left Dallas. Good for him.
Yeah.
Go get the money, man.
Well, absolutely. Well, look at and it happens time and time again, especially with the franchise tag. Look at Earl Thomas a few years ago when he, in good faith, played on the franchise tag. Then he gets hurt and flicks off the player and flicks off the owner as he's getting carted off the field. So
I mean, the NFL players are underpaid to begin with. I mean, considering how much money the NFL generates, and you see their contracts compared to MLB and NBA, it's a complete joke. I mean, only the quarterbacks and elite players get paid. A lot of these guys don't make, I mean, yes, relatively to the average person, yes, they make money, but their careers are short, man. And the NFL is the most popular sport, generates the most revenue, and what these guys get paid, it's a joke.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they deal with the most long-term effects on their health.
Yeah, and the careers are shortest.
Yeah.
Baseball careers going on for 15 years. No one in the NFL playing that long.
Our guy Kyle in the chat said, funny how people who criticize the players for being greedy never say anything about the billionaire owners.
Yeah, it's true, man. Like, why is everyone on against the players and on the owner's side? Like, come on, man. It never made any sense to me.
Yep. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Completely agree. So we're going to move on to running backs. This one is pretty easy, and we all agreed, so I think we can go over this one quick. Adam, I'll let you take this one. All three of us had Alvin Kamara. I tried to look for somebody else just for play devil's advocate and be able to talk about somebody else, but there isn't anybody else you could consider for MVP for running back.
Yeah, just a huge floor. I mean, he's already at his bye, at least 19.9 points in every game at PPR formats. I mean, he doesn't even get a lot of carries, man. He's had 13 carries or fewer in 4 of his 5 games, but the receptions, man, 5, 9, 13, 3, and 8. Yes, a lot of that has to do with Michael Thomas being out. He's had at least 8 targets in 4 or 5 games, but he's just been so productive. And most drafts, he went 4th overall. I will say this, I probably overthought it and made a mistake. I was in a draft, like right around the time when it was the epidural and the contract, and I'm like, what am I going to do? It was September 1st, and I'm like, all right, I had the 4th pick, and I went Dalvin Cook. Next guy took Kamara, and immediately I'm like, damn, I messed up. Now, Dalvin Cook's been fine. You know, he's been fine. I know he missed last week, and I had Alexander Madison I drafted. Obviously, that was a dud.
Yeah.
But still, man.
I don't get that.
But still, pass up on Kamara, I was like, oh, man, that sucks. And seeing what he's doing, because, it was easy to take him at 4. And there were some leagues where he started to fall to 7 or 8. So some of those players got a big bargain on him.
Yep, and I unfortunately I took Zeke over him in Scott Fishbowl, which is a little different. I was at 6, so I got Zeke at 6, and so he went 7 in there. Quarterbacks went high just because of the way it is. But I debated between the two, and I went for Zeke because of the first downs, which Zeke's been fine, but Kamara has just been unreal. So, Dan, do you have anything to add about Kamara?
Yeah, funniest draft story. Somehow, Barkley lasted until my pick. So I wasn't planning on drafting Barkley. He wasn't even supposed to be there. I was all set to take Kamara. But with Barkley there, I had to take him. And of course, now, hindsight, Barkley's hurt for the rest of the year, and Kamara is killing everything. But,
See, something like that, like I wouldn't beat myself up. You made the right call, and it happens. Like I do beat myself up a little bit just because I should have known, look, they're going to pay this guy. That Fedora was a little bit of concern with a back issue, but it was all timing of the draft. If that draft's the next day or 2 days later, I'd take Kamara easily.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't blame myself. I blame the guy in front of me that should have drafted Barkley but didn't.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. Like you said, sometimes it's the right process and the wrong result. And that's what people get.
A lot of fantasy players confuse that, and I get these questions all the time. There are times I'm like, look, you made the right move. It didn't work out. There are other times where you second-guess yourself and make a bad move. That's where you're like, all right, where did I go wrong? How do I learn from it? But a lot of times you made the right call, and there's some bad luck. Injuries happen, and, it's easy to sit here now. Oh, yeah, I should have taken Kamara Barkley. Well, we didn't know Barkley was going to tear his ACL.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yep. So for biggest surprise, we all have the same guy as well, so we can roll through this one pretty quickly. I was completely wrong. I wrote him off as just another guy. Dan, we talked about it on our first show. We thought, undrafted, he's really not going to do much. But Adam, who's the guy that we all have as the biggest surprise for running back?
Yeah, James Robinson. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, he's had double-digit points in PPR formats in every game, and then they spoke a few weeks ago about we got to get him more involved in the passing game. And this is a coach actually telling the truth, unlike Sean McVay with Cam Akers. We've seen targets of 6.4, 7.4 the last few weeks. Now, he hasn't gotten much done on the ground lately. I mean, the carries have gone down. They've been playing from behind, but the passing game role has definitely helped him. And he did score a receiving touchdown last week. But this was a guy that you, for most part, got off the waiver wire early in the season. We kind of saw it coming. All right, Leonard Fournette's gone. Ozigbo's on IR. Raquel Armstead, which we haven't heard anything about on the COVID-19 list.
Like he's been on the COVID list for like 3 months now.
Yeah, bro. Like, I mean, I hope he's okay. I mean, we haven't heard anything from him. But yeah, Robinson was someone who probably I wasn't aggressive in too many leagues. I got him in 2. But he did go for FD price in some, and it's paid off for those that definitely spent that amount.
Yep, he feel like he's turned into, and I did the same thing, unfortunately, with Philip Lindsay last year. It was a guy that I was like, yeah, he'll be okay, and he's not going to turn into much. And I will say I'm pretty happy that I picked him up in free agency in a dynasty league that I took over for an orphan that was brutal, that had no picks. I was able to flip him for a first. I'm not going to compete this year. It's actually one that me and Marty co-owned together. We both decided to flip him for a first, and it looked like it's going to be a high first. So I'm happy with that. What do you think his value is trade-wise in the dynasty league?
I don't think it's that high, man. I think people still are skeptical of him, and maybe they don't believe he's the future back on this team. So it just feels like he doesn't get the respect.
Yep.
People still doubt him.
Yep. And it was after that big game against Miami, we decided to sell while the getting was good. So it could have blew up in our face, but we weren't planning on competing this year, so we took the pick. For biggest bust, this one is somebody who I kind of shied away from this year, and I'm glad. Adam, who do you have for your biggest bust at the running back position?
I mean, Mark Ingram, I wasn't very high on him to begin with. 30 years old. He had 202 carries last year. He caught 5 receiving touchdowns on like 25 receptions. Like, again, outlier season. But I didn't think it would be this bad, man. Really, I mean, it's been abysmal. The guy's averaging 6.6 points per game in PPR formats. He's 53rd in points per game at the running back position. I mean, he is useless, man. If he doesn't score a touchdown, it's a waste. I know he's hurt right now, but man, this has just been abysmal. Guy has 3 receptions on the season. He's done nothing with his carries. It's been bad. And this was a guy going in the 5th, 6th round. And you were like, well, yeah, sure. They drafted J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is there, but this is going to be a potent running game. Man, it has been absolute disaster. I mean, each week, like, he just falls down the rankings. And it's like, do I even rank him? Like, it's that bad. Like, you don't want to start him at all.
Yeah, yep. And, who knows if he gets Wally pipped while he's out with injury, if Dobbins and Gus Edwards turn it on and they just decide to, I think they're all getting like 20% of the carries back there. So there's no way that any of those guys are going to be productive with that kind of timeshare going on. So, Dan, who do you have as your biggest bust for the running backs?
This is more a lower guy. I'm going to go with Nyheim Hines. I don't think that he was a sneaky good like add in PPR leagues. I know everyone expected Jonathan Taylor to come in and take over everything. But in that game earlier in the year against Jacksonville, he had 8 receptions and a touchdown, and everyone thought it was going to be great. And since then, he's done absolutely nothing. He's been pretty much droppable in every format. He doesn't even have 3 catches. He's averaging 3 catches the rest of since then. So
yeah, they gave Jordan Wilkins some run too. So
yeah. Exactly. Jordan Wilkins, like who is that? He's a bum. Exactly. But yeah, it's Hines for me.
Okay. Well, I went with CEH, and it was mainly because of where he started going once Damian Williams opted out. He was going in the middle of the first round. And, Dan, you know this. I've been a CEH truther since the get-go. I really liked him. I was loving getting him at the back end of the third. And he's been solid but unspectacular. He's got this week, of course, is his first game over 20 fantasy points. He's had some struggles in the red zone, granted. I think it's more of the play call. When you just keep running them up the middle, no creativity with that offense, he hasn't really been set up for success in the red zone. So I don't think that's necessarily all his fault. But for where he was going, I've seen him go over Kamara, seen him go over Chubb. Chubb's hurt now. But I was really upset when Damian Williams opted out because I was loving that 3rd round ADP. And I thought Damian Williams was just a guy anyway. So I thought CEH was going to take over this backfield. So for me, just where he was going, and he's been good. Don't get me wrong, but just he wasn't worth where he was going in drafts.
See, like I agree with some of what you said, but I can't label him a bust only because he's been healthy every game and he's hit double-digit points in PPR formats every game. Yes, relative to draft costs, he's disappointment, but I think you have to look at the running back position a little bit different right now. If your guy's healthy and he's out there every week producing, you got to be happy right now because you saw Nick Chubb, Eckler, all these guys going down, even Josh Jacobs. Like you can make a case, Jacobs been a little bit of disappointment, but he's hit double-digit points in PPR formats every week. He's been healthy. I think that's what you have to look for out of your running back at this point. So, yes, relative to draft costs, he hasn't lived up to expectations, but he's been in your lineup every single week. And imagine if he did get those 2 touchdowns that were called back due to penalty, you wouldn't even put him in this conversation.
Yep. I would take him right now in my home league. I've got Barkley, Chubb, and Sanders. So I would gladly take CEH right now.
Gotta love the center we have this year. If your guy's alive, he's good.
Exactly. He's a warm-bodied, and he's good to go. So we're going to move on to some buy lows. Adam, who do you have?
And that's a great segue into the guy that I have because I don't think this guy's any good, but it's about volume. David Montgomery. I think if you poll everyone right now, you ask people, oh, David Montgomery, he sucks. I don't want him. And I'd probably say the same thing. Bottom line is he gets the volume, and with Tariq Cohen out, he's involved in a passing game. That's why I didn't like Montgomery going into the year. I'm like, well, Tariq Cohen's going to take away his pass catching abilities, and then you're relying on touchdowns in this offense. Yeah, I'm not interested. But look at the last 3 games: 6, 8, and 5 targets. Man, it's just giving him a huge floor. 18.9 points versus the Bucs, a very tough run defense. Now, yeah, against the Panthers, you expect them more. We know how they are terrible on the ground, 13.7. But it's all about perception here. And I think people hate David Montgomery. They don't think he's any good, and there's truth to that. But if we're going to get that volume from him and he's going to be involved in the passing game, I think you can get him cheap. Because, again, people just don't think anything of him, and they're right. But this is also – you have to look at the statistics and what is his role in this offense. And if he's going to be catching 4 or 5 passes a game, it just raises his floor.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Once Cohen went down, he's getting all the passing work too. They got nobody. I really thought Bell might have wound up there, not in Kansas City, but without Bell there, he's getting everything. So, Dan, who do you have as your buy low for running backs?
It's a guy we touched on before. It's Myles Gaskin. I haven't I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong places. I just don't see anyone really talking about him much. And all he's done is producing. Yeah, he's not the most exciting guy. He doesn't have the high draft capital. He's a former 7th round pick. He's not the most athletic, but he just produces. He has at least 15 fantasy points in 5 out of the 6 weeks he's played. He has 4 targets. He's involved in the passing game. He's healthy, which, as we know, is a key point. So I just think that if you can get him, no one seems that excited to own him. So if you can get him for cheap, go get him. Yeah,
I think he's locked in as a RB2 right now, and especially like we were talking about, if they start to lean on the run even more with Tua, trying to ease him into things, his value could go up. I get a few extra touches per game. I'm going to go with this is kind of a buy low. I'm going to say Miles Sanders, and strictly for 2 reasons. One, if somebody in your league has Sanders and they're win now, they started 2-4, they only have 1 win, and they can't take not having him for 3 weeks. Sanders, all the talk all offseason was, Doug Peterson's only running back by committee. He's not going to have this. They're going to sign Freeman. They're going to draft a running back. Yeah, well, when you have guys like Jay Ajayi, that's what's going to be the case. So, sorry, my computer just messed up for a second. He leads the yards and leads the NFL in yards per carry, and he's got 60% of the snaps. If you can target an owner who needs a running back right now, we were talking about earlier with Wentz, the schedule that he has coming up. Giants, Dallas. He's not going to play in the Giants, and then he probably won't play against Dallas. But after the bye, the Giants, Cleveland, Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, and Dallas. That's a fantastic schedule for anybody, including running backs. And I think if you're able to get him somebody that is desperate for a win, I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, 2 things on that. I almost put Miles Sanders in there, but I hate trading for injured players. They're saying, it could be a week or 2, but didn't we think Michael Thomas would be back by now? And I know 1 game was the suspension, but now he also popped up with a hamstring today. But I do agree, if you are 4-2, 5-1, this is the time to look at look at teams who are 2-4, 1-5, desperate for a win. If they have Miles Sanders, they're going to trade him. And I would too. If I was 1-5, what am I waiting for Miles Sanders? They got a buy upcoming. I'm going to miss some time. I would trade him away. So if you are in a spot where you're fortunate where, hey, I'm 5-1, 6-0, 4-2, I got a lot of points, this is a great week to look at those teams that have those players that are injured or struggling and that need something now. Because once you're 1-5, it's all about this week. And it can be done. I had a league last year that was 0-4. I came back and won the championship. So that's another lesson too. Just don't give up. Even when it appears bleak, as easy as you lost 4 games in a row, you can win 4 in a row. And a lot depends on your roster. And you have to look at it from a realistic standpoint and go, is this team good or it isn't? Sometimes I've seen really good teams that just have had bad luck. And that's the other thing too. When people are 1-5, they want to make a drastic change. They're like, well, this hasn't worked. I got to do something. So yeah, this is a really good week to kind of go, I would go to my league. All right, who has Miles Sanders? Oh, they're 1-5. And I would say, hey, look, Miles Sanders does you no good. You need wins now. I'm in a position where I can put him on the bench. Here, this is what I'll give you for him. And it's a risk because we can find out Sanders' injury is worse than what they're telling us too. But
absolutely.
You got to take some risks sometimes.
If you can get him for 75 cents on the dollar, it's well worth it.
Yes.
Let's go into the chat. We do have a couple of questions. Marty's asking, being fantasy writers, do you guys find it hard to make trades in your leagues? I'm not a writer, but people know I'm listening to you guys every day, and it's brutal for me in my home league. You're a much bigger name than us, Adam. So, what do you think? You've been doing this for a lot longer than we have. Do you find it hard in your home leagues of people who listen to you and read your work to trade with them?
Yeah, I think in fantasy football, it's very difficult to trade in redraft leagues because what does everybody want? Running backs. What does everybody lack depth at? Running back. So it's kind of hard to make trades in football in general. I really don't make many. I haven't even sent out any offers this year. I play in some leagues where we can't trade, but it is difficult. And especially, I have a friend, he texted me, he's like, oh, I'm reading your rankings. If they're not right, I'm going to sue you. So all my information is out there and people know. And I actually try to be a little cryptic because I have a friend who's in my home league. We compete against each other, but we also share a team in 2 other leagues. And I won't talk about waivers with him until our home league runs. And our home league runs Wednesday at noon. So I don't talk about anything. I let that run. And then we have our other 2 leagues at night. And sometimes people get upset like, oh, come on. I'm like, well, look, I'm very competitive, man. I'm not trying to give you any information, but there's so much information out there now. If you're like a dedicated fantasy player, there's so many ways to get information that I think players are just more savvy now, So if you have someone who really is into fantasy football and pays attention, then it's hard to make deals. The whole buy low, sell high thing, it's a lot of garbage a lot of times because people are not dumb anymore. There's so much information out there. So if you are in a home league where you can take advantage of those people, maybe it's a casual office league where people aren't as sharp. Sure. I've only seen 1 trade go down in any of the leagues I'm in this year. It just happened the other day. Someone traded Lamar Jackson for DJ Chark.
Wow.
And I looked and I'm like, wait a second. And I looked, they had Aaron Rodgers. So my thinking was they said, all right, Aaron Rodgers had his bye. Lamar Jackson has one this week. I got to get something for him. But the thing I'm pissed about, I'm not strong at quarterback. I didn't get a damn offer. Why?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's something else. Yeah, and same thing. I purposely there's one guy in my home league, and I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way, Adam. I know you play in some big money leagues, but for me, league that's most important to me is my home league. That's the one that I want to win. That's why I do all the research. I want that belt. I want to talk junk to my friends. I purposely have all of them blocked on Twitter. Only one of my buddies knows that I actually do any of this, don't do a show or write or anything like that. So I'm going to keep that going as long as I can. I'm sure they'll eventually figure it out. But the one guy, yes, he does. It is difficult to trade with him because he reads my articles. He watches the show. So he knows. That's why I lost out on Herbert, because he saw I talked about Herbert and he got me about $1. But, it is what it is. I'm going to keep going with that as long as I can. And I did the same thing. I had a team that I co-owned with a friend. We waivers ran the same day, but we were sworn by blood, not really, but we swore that we set our waivers, and then once they were set, we didn't change them, and then we would talk about them because they ran on the same day. So, Dan, what about you?
Yeah, it's almost impossible. In my home league, I've won the past couple of years, but even my home league, in my big money league, Ray, the guy we had on our first guest. He's in the
He's,
most of my
he's
leagues.
in the chat as well.
He's in most of my leagues with me, and he's a runner just like me. So it's impossible to get. I never trade with him. The last time I traded with him was like 6-7 years ago, and everyone else, reads everything, and they're all pretty active, doing their research. So it's really, really hard to get any trades done at all.
Well, we'll keep rolling, and we're going to move on to wide receiver. Adam, who do you have for your MVP so far for wide receiver?
DK Metcalf. He leads the position in points per game. If you subtract Travis Fulgham, who's played 3 games, Metcalf.
3 games.
Yeah.
I heard him. I know. I was there. I saw it.
But Metcalf has just been dominant, man. I think we all saw his progression in the second half last year, saw him in the postseason. And he's still a guy that went in the 4th, 5th round of drafts. I was looking at my home league today. He was wide receiver 24 off the board. I mean, that is just a smash win. Russell Wilson, small passing tree in Seattle. It's Metcalf and Lockett most of the time. So you love that. And, he's had at least – think about this. He's had at least 92 receiving yards in every game he's played this year. And and there's still more of a ceiling here. I mean, the first 4 games, he had 4 receptions in each game. And part of that is, again, Seattle, they've become more aggressive because of their defense being so bad, but they're still not passing a ton. So we might even be able to see more out of Metcalf. So for where he's drafted, man, he's smashed.
You buy any of the talk that Antonio Brown might sign in Seattle?
Look, it could be. I mean, the whole thing is there's still – a team could sign him, but he's still got to get past the NFL. He can face discipline. So I think people are going to be picking him up. I probably would, if you have the extra roster spot, just put him there because if he is healthy and he plays, I think he could still play. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, we don't know what he's been doing off the field, but I have seen some videos of him training. But I think he's a guy that instantly can go to a team and put up numbers.
Yep. You hear that, Dan? Adam agrees. He's worth a pickup. We had this argument the other day.
I never said he wasn't worth a pickup. I said I wasn't going to pick him up.
Yeah, I said pick him up simply, even if you could just trade him once these rumors kick up. Even if you get, pick him up for free, even if you get just something decent, it's free. And if you got the roster spot, like you said.
If anyone trades anything decent for him, they're dumb.
Well, there's plenty of dumb people that play fantasy sports. So
they're real people. He's a name guy.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's true. You're right. He is. Also, for Ray, he wants me to trade him CH. Absolutely. I'll trade him as soon as you give me Jonathan Taylor and Patrick Mahomes.
Well, it looks like he's offering you OBJ.
Oh, is he? Is that what that is?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll take Mahomes.
Dan, who is your MVP?
Oh, it's JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah. We got a long-running joke with J-Jaw. Dan has been hyping him up since.
He outscored LaVisca Chenault last week, and you'll never be able to take that away from me. Ever.
Don't talk about J-Jaw. Don't talk about my boy Visca.
Take your
I'm
fang.
a big-time Visca truther. So
no, I want to go outside the box. I think it's Travis Fulgham. I can understand he's only played 3 games. He isn't as consistent as Metcalf or Ridley or any of these guys. Yeah, I am. But Wentz, Wentz trusts him. He throws to him when he's covered. His schedule coming up looks fantastic from a perceived perspective. He's number 1 in points per game for the games he's played. So I think it's an outside the box thing. I'm not saying that Metcalf doesn't deserve it because he's been awesome too. I love me some Metcalf, but I think Fulgham could be a league winner going forward.
Yep. Yeah. I like Fulgham. I don't know if I would consider him MVP. I could definitely agree with the Metcalf call. I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley. Not points per game, but he scored the most points so far this season for wide receivers. He seems to be pulling a Chris Godwin from last year and overtaking the number 1 wide receiver spot for Atlanta. He's got, 33 points, 29 points, 21 points, 16 and 18. And then he did have a nice goose egg week 4, but that's when he got hurt. So I just think the offense that he's in is terrible as that defense is, similar to Metcalf. It's a high-flying offense. The defense is terrible. He's got a capable quarterback. I just think it's going to continue, and I think he's, especially for where he was being drafted, is a great value. So I agree with the Metcalf call. A lot of similarities with Ridley. We're running a little long here, so we'll try to burn through these here quickly. So, biggest surprise, Adam, you and I had the same guy, so I'll let you take this. Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming. In some leagues, he went in the double-digit rounds. He's had at least 10.5 points in PPR formats in every game. Again, Matt Rule knew him from Temple, so maybe should have read into that more. But, yeah, Robbie Anderson has definitely been one of the best values, and I was off him.
Yeah, I was too. He seemed to never be able to stay healthy at the Jets, but anybody that goes to the Jets is just a black hole, especially with Gase there. So I guess we should have known better. Look at Ryan Tannehill and everybody else. But you've already talked about your boy, so biggest surprise was Fulgham for you. Biggest bust, Adam, you have T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I drafted him in only one league, and it was a Scott Fishbowl. And even when I drafted him, I was like, I don't like this. Maybe I'm wrong, but man, it has been absolute disaster. This guy has no touchdowns in a week. Phillip Rivers went ham last week, 1 catch for 11 yards. I know he had a touchdown call back due to a penalty, but man, I think you're seeing a trend here. A lot of the receivers that are older, 30 and older, are really not producing this year. I don't know if it has to do with the lack of a preseason, or is this just a young guy's game now, but Marvin Jones, Julian Edelman outside of one game, AJ Green outside of one game. These guys 30 and over have not been productive. I know Thielen and Julio have been okay, but we're seeing a lot of them just basically doing nothing.
Yeah, and Julio too. It's the same thing that's been the story of his career. He's out there, he produces, but I feel like every time he gets tackled, you're worried if he's going to get up or he's nicked or something like that. So that's just another thing you got to deal with him. Who do you have for your biggest bust?
It's Preston Williams.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. He likes to hate on me for Preston Williams.
It's Preston Williams. He scored double-digit points once this entire year. He had that one good game against San Francisco. He's averaging 2 receptions a game. He's entirely touchdown dependent. Take away those 2 touchdowns he scored, he's scoring like 2 points a game. Everyone thought he was going to be this big breakout guy, and with Parker, and he's going to be at least wide receiver too, and he's done absolutely nothing.
I can't disagree with you as much as I love Preston Williams.
That's right, you can't.
Yeah, for once, it is what it is. But I'm gonna have to go with Juju. Everybody was making excuses for Juju last year with Big Ben being hurt, having Duck Hodges throw the ball to him and Mason Rudolph. But I think he's proven, that unless things change, he can't handle being that number 1 wide receiver. He's behind James Washington, Claypool, and Johnson in percentage of targeted routes is only at 10. He has no games over 100 yards. He's only got 1 game over 50. He's the wide receiver 3 there right now. Can he turn around? Yeah, he's got the talent, but until he can prove that he can handle being the alpha, I just, where he was being drafted. I've seen people trading Claypool for Juju straight up.
People keep drafting Juju as if Antonio Brown still plays for the Steelers, and he doesn't.
We got our buy lows. Adam, who's your buy low wide receiver?
Marquise Hollywood Brown. I mean, this guy's been getting open continuously, and Lamar Jackson has been missing him. And, he's had at least 9.2 fantasy points in PPR formats every game except one. Only has the 1 touchdown. But once Lamar Jackson can start hitting him, I mean, we're going to see some big games. So I think people who drafted him are probably disappointed. So ahead of the bye week, or maybe wait till the bye week passes before the next week, I think you can buy low on him.
He just got dropped in one of my leagues. I'm trying to keep that up. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. I want to play in that league if Hollywood Brown
100% just got dropped. I mean,
wow. Yeah, and there's been a couple too since I've got Lamar Jackson. A lot of places I've watched a lot of the Ravens games, and I mean he's just overthrown. If he connected on 1 or 2 of those passes, we'd be talking about a completely different story. So, yeah, I like that call. Dan, let's hear your homer call for this one as well.
It's Jalen Ray Gary. He got hurt. Should be
soon. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, he should be coming back soon. If Fulgham can keep up his production, then he'll be someone's defenses have to focus on. So Rager won't get 100% of the coverage. He has the athlete. He's a first-round pick for a reason. If he can come back healthy, Wentz will target him. And he had that couple. He got open deep, but Wentz just missed him. So he has the potential to have a couple big games.
Yeah, I like that call. And my buy low is going to be Mike Evans, which is kind of weird for me because not that I don't think he's talented, but I've always been more of Mike Evans is a little overhyped. But I feel like it's a complete opposite now because he's had a couple games where he had only his catches were the only thing that he had. Two catches for 2 touchdowns, 1 catch for 1 touchdown. But he still had 4 out of his 6 games at double digits. He's had 2 20-point games. I think that people are worried about him, and they haven't had Godwin. Godwin taking away some of that defensive coverage helps them. And when the defenses are able to key in on him more, he's not going to be as good. So I think Godwin coming back is going to help. I do think Godwin's the number 1 in that offense, but I think what you're able to get him for, if somebody's willing to sell him for a mid to low wide receiver 2, I think it's well worth it. And we're going to go through these next couple ones quick. MVP for tight end. Adam, you and I both had Kelsey. For me, at least, I love Kittle. I think they're both, it's 1 and 1A, but Kelsey's been more consistent. Kittle, it seems like it happened last year too. He gets hit in the knee. He's out for a few games. He has those, games that he just falls flat on his face. Kelsey doesn't have those. He's got every game where he's over double digits.
Yeah, he's got at least 23, 2, and 3 of 6. And yeah, he stays on the field again. Love Kittle too. I have Kittle in 1 league, Kelsey in 2. They're both great, but got to give it to Kelsey. He's been on the field more this year.
Dan, you have Kittle. Make the argument for Kittle over Kelsey.
I just think, Kelsey has Mahomes thrown to him, and Kittle has Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. So I think that, I'm not saying Kelsey doesn't deserve it because I think he's the best. I just, and he's currently, I think, number 1 in scoring in PPR for tight ends. I just wanted to be contrarian.
Yeah. And it's splitting hairs. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say that either one of them aren't great. It's those 2 and then everybody else. Kyle said he's got Jonnu on 7 of his 17 rosters. So that's his MVP. For biggest surprise, you guys both have Robert Tonyan. Adam, why'd you go with Tonyan over anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, no one was talking about him before the year, and obviously had the 3 straight games of scoring a touchdown, 5 in that span, and the big game against Atlanta. Now, we did see him come back down to earth last week, but that was partly because the offense as a whole struggled. Aaron Rodgers, after that good start in the first quarter, they just kind of folded and went home. Devontae Adams is back, so it's interesting to see what the volume is. But, Rodgers definitely has a trust level on him, which is important, and they just don't have good receivers. MVS is not good. He's an athlete. You watch him, the routes he run, the guy's not productive. I mean, Rodgers is probably sick of him and going to stop throwing to him. And they need Lazard back. So Tonyan is definitely a big surprise because I don't think no one was really talking about him before the year.
You think the production continues if and when Lazard comes back?
I think it's going to be tough. But the tight end position is a disaster if you don't have Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, even Mark Andrews been up and down. Jonnu Smith, let's hope he stays healthy. Jonnu's been great outside of last week where he got hurt. He's someone I have a lot of, but tight end's really tough on a week-to-week basis.
I feel like every year that you say, "Oh, it's deeper than ever," and then the same thing happens.
Every year we go through it, man, and then the season starts and we're in week 4. Oh yeah, I hate this guy. This guy had a 0. This guy had 2. Every single.
You get 3 for 33, and if you get a touchdown, you're tight end 1. Happens every year. I went Jimmy Graham, and simply because I'll be honest, I thought Jimmy Graham retired. I forgot he was even playing. He's just another one too, and I can't disagree with Tonyan, but he's just Jimmy Graham is a shell of himself. But since Foles has gotten in there, he's got 3 games of double digits, and that's tight end 1. So he was free. It's somebody who came out of nowhere and is out producing a lot of guys who, although Irv Smith had a good game this week, I was pretty high on him, but all those hyped up tight ends, but in the preseason, same thing. You get 3 for 30 and a touchdown, you're a tight end 1.
And Rodgers actually looks for Tonyan in the end zone, which is important.
So biggest bust, you guys agreed on that one as well. Dan, we'll start with you, and then go to you as well, Adam. But Dan, since you're the resident Eagles fan here, who is your tight end bust? I think everybody could probably guess now.
It's Ertz. Ertz was ranked top 5 tight end by pretty much everyone going into the year, and with all receiver injuries happening again, everyone, and even Goddard getting hurt, everyone expected him to be a target catch machine, and it just hasn't happened. He had that thing about his contract, before the year started, and he's gone out and shown absolutely nothing to deserve getting that extension. So shockingly, he hasn't performed, and so Ertz is definitely the call there.
And Adam, what do you have to say about Ertz?
Yeah, man. I mean, 45 targets, only 24 receptions, 3 games of 20 yards or fewer. It's just been an absolute disaster for Ertz.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ertz. I went with Higbee simply because everybody was hyping him up so high where he was going in drafts. He had that blow-up game against the Eagles, but I think I could play tight end to go against the Eagles and have a good game. But other than that, he doesn't have a single game in double digits. He was being drafted as one of the I think 6th or 7th tight ends off the board. And I think people take, situations from last year and, he went on that ridiculous run and they say, oh, like we talked about earlier, you extrapolate that across the whole season, he's going to be a monster. You can't do that. Situations change. When Everett's in the lineup, it's a different situation. So just relative to where he was going to, Higbee for me is my biggest bust. And I don't disagree with Ertz by any means. And buy lows, you guys both have the same, and Adam, we'll start with you. Who do you have for your buy low?
Dallas Goedert. We saw even with Ertz on the field the first 2 weeks, 9 and 8 targets, and he's just better than him right now. It's just, better after the catch, and doesn't look like he'll be back this week. But then they get the Cowboys in week 8, maybe then, or maybe they play it safe. They got to buy in week 9, but either way, Ertz is going to be out multiple weeks, and Goddard might have been dropped in some leagues, so I would say Goddard.
Dan, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you don't call him No Yak Zach for a reason. The guy just catches the ball and falls down. Goddard is clearly the better yak player. With Zach being gone, I'm really interested to see how he's going to perform as the T1 in that offense. See what Fulgham can keep up what they're doing. If Rager comes back healthy, then I think he'll be doing good the rest of the year.
Yeah, I like the Goddard call. I went a little different just with TJ Hawkinson. Feel like, he's not getting a ton of volume, but he's second on the team in targets, and he's catching the passes when they're coming his way. I feel like he's right there. I feel like he's getting ready to blow up. But he's got double-digit points in 3 out of 5 games. In those other 2 games, he got 9.7 and 9.3. So he's hovering right around that double-digit mark. And unless you've got one of those big names, that's what you want out of a tight end. If you can get double digits, you are happy. So I think Hawkinson's getting close to breaking out, and he's somebody that, if he's available on waivers, he's somebody that I'm targeting. So that's going to be it for the positions. We just got 2 quick things to wrap it up. Adam, we ask all our guests to come with something that you're well known, so everybody knows a good amount about you already. But is there anything that you have that the fantasy football community and baseball, because I know you cover baseball too, might not know about you?
Well, I almost became a teacher in 2004. I was living in Florida covering high school sports and college sports. I was covering FAU. Howard Schellenberger was the coach at FAU at the time, legendary. People know him from University of Miami. Cindy Green was the coach of the basketball team at FAU, and their baseball team was ranked top 25 in the country. But I just hated it down there. I'm from Queens, from New York, and I was like, I got to find a way to get back to New York. So got accepted into the New York City Teaching Fellowship Program. They basically pay half for your master's. So I'm in class for a week in June, and I'm not even paying attention to what's going on. I'm listening to the Met games like this in class with a piece in my ear. And I realized my sister's a teacher. She's like, look, you don't want to do this, because I was doing it for the wrong reasons, to get back to New York, summers off, and got back into sports. And basically the moral of the story is just chase what you're passionate about. It could look bleak and it could be a long road, but if you put in the hard work and the dedication, eventually you'll wind up where you are. I never thought fantasy sports would be something I do as a living. Obviously, it's part of where the fantasy sports has ballooned in popularity. I always wanted to do radio, though. Went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. So just be passionate and chase your dreams is the moral of that story.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had no clue.
Great advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we end this show. We end our show every week with this. Dan and I are in agreement. We believe that Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. Adam, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, what's your take?
I'll lean Jordan, but I will say this. The disrespect of LeBron James is disgusting. for real, the people that criticize him, it's I knew it. And even after they won a championship, people are going to criticize him. This guy has been touted as a top player since he was a teenager. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at age 16. I used to cover high school sports for Newsday, and I saw him at the primetime shootout in his senior year. He played Trevor Ariza's high school team. And I'm like, this guy all hype. He dropped 50. You could see he was a man among boys. So he came into this league with high expectations. Not only that, he's exceeded them, okay? This guy is one of the best players of all time. He's won several championships. He is going to be 36 in December, and he's still one of the best players in the NBA, and people just criticize him. He's played an extra 3.5 seasons when you consider all of his postseason, all the deep runs he's made into the finals, 9 of the last 10 NBA finals. You can criticize his Miami decision. He even regrets the way he went about that. But the hate for LeBron James is disgusting. And now people are against him because of his political views. Who cares? I watch him on the court. I want to see him as an athlete. So I just think he's unfairly criticized. And it's because of the era we live in, all the social media, all the attention. And people are going to look back when he retires and be like, man, that guy was great, and I didn't respect him. So it's Jordan. And I think that's the other problem is all these Michael Jordan fanboys just don't even want to have LeBron James in the conversation. He's in the conversation. You can say whatever you want. He's in the conversation. I'll give it to you, fine, Jordan. But, don't dismiss LeBron James. He's one of the best players to play ever. And, yeah, it was a shortened season. And people say, oh, well, he had an advantage time off. The Clippers didn't? Well, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, it's his fault. And I was the guy that picked the Clippers to win an NBA championship. It's his fault. They choked away a 3-1 lead. Could you imagine that was LeBron James, what the Clippers did? No one says anything about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. If it was LeBron James, it'd still be leading SportsCenter right now. So the criticism of LeBron James is just completely unfair. One of the best players of all time. He stays out of trouble, and all he does is win, and he doesn't get hurt. He had one season last year where he got hurt. What he has done and his body and his shape is amazing, man. And I'm not even the biggest LeBron James fan, but I got to be objective, and people are wrong for criticizing him. It's disgusting because people just want to tear people down at the top. That's what it is.
Yeah, you're right there, and I agree. And when I tell people that I think Michael Jordan's the greatest, it's nothing against LeBron. If anybody says that LeBron isn't one of the greatest of all time, then they're just being a troll. Simple as that. They're just being a hater. LeBron has done good. He built that school in Ohio, so I'm lucky enough to remember watching Michael Jordan play and be able to watch LeBron James play. Two of arguably the best ever. So I'm with you on that. Dan, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I don't agree with the people that, even when we have conversations in our Going for Two chat, say that we hate LeBron. Like, we don't hate LeBron. It's not. Neither of us think LeBron is a terrible player because he isn't. He is one of the greatest to ever play. And I think, like you said, being able to watch Jordan and LeBron has been, a privilege. I just don't think that he's better than Jordan. That doesn't mean he sucks. He's not like a bum, but he's just not the GOAT. That's all.
Right there with you. So. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Tell everybody if somebody for some reason doesn't know where they can find you, where they can find your work.
Yeah, fantasyalarm.com. I cover MLB, NFL, NBA there, as well as wageralarm.com. Put up some MLB best bets for Game 2 of the World Series tonight. Game 1, I had Kershaw over 6.5 strikeouts. That cashed. So you can check me out there. SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Tuesday and Wednesday nights, 1 to 3 a.m. Eastern. If it's too late, you got to go to bed early for work. You can listen on demand anytime you want. Thursday nights, midnight to 2 a.m. Eastern. Also do a podcast with Howard Bender called Annie Up. So you can find that on iTunes and Spotify. So, yeah, just wagering. And we do live streams on there. You could subscribe to the Fantasy Alarm YouTube page as well. So, you can find me all around doing a lot of sports, always staying busy, but no complaints. This is a lot of fun, and I appreciate the invite. Glad to be with you guys here tonight.
Yeah, like I was telling you earlier, I've been listening to you for a long time since, back in the FNTSY days, and you and Dr. Roto on SiriusXM. So to have you on is really a privilege. I appreciate it. Marty helping getting this put together. Marty said you don't sleep, which definitely doesn't be the case. Dan, where can everybody find your stuff?
All right, so I have my weekly rookie rankings on Going for Two. You can find me at EagleDanFF on Twitter.
And you can find me. Dan and I have our normal Thursday show. We will have tomorrow with the guys from Dynasty Junkies at 7 o'clock. So it's going to be more of our standard weekly show. We just wanted to do something special since Adam was able to come on with us. I do my weekly 10 things to know about whatever week we're in at at Going for Two. I do starts and stits for Sleeper Wire. So that's pretty much it. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And hopefully if you guys can make it, come back and see us tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
Have a good night, everyone.